we have about 3,000 offices around the country that work directly with those farmers and ranchers, technical specialists in field offices all over. And my role is as the state conservationist is more of the administrative and operational role, even though I did start in a field office. So that's kind of my current role in managing the 20 offices we have in the state, the 150 employees we have across the state that are working directly with those farmers and ranchers and identifying natural resource concerns in their farming operation, and then writing a conservation plan on how to address those resource concerns. And then there are federal, congressionally appropriated farm bill programs that can assist with some of the costs associated with implementing those plans or installing those conservation practices that our technical team has recommended. So that's a little bit about what I do.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm going to pass the same question on to Jacob. So could you please provide an introduction by sharing insights about your background, the organization you represent, and your current role?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Katie had mentioned I'm the Membership and Public Policy Coordinator at Agricultural Council of California. We are a membership-based nonprofit that represents roughly 15,000 individual farmers in the state of California who are members, are either farmer-owned businesses or members of um, farm cooperatives. And I was born and raised in Northern California. I spent most of my time in the Sacramento Valley, which includes Sacramento and a bit north of it, studying production agriculture, mainly regenerative row crops and permanent crops like almonds and walnuts. And after a few years of deciding that that wasn't quite what I wanted to do, I started at ASU Swette Center in their Sustainable Food Systems program, and have since begun a career in public policy and government advocacy for farmers and ranchers in the state of California. Currently, I do a lot of work coordinating our membership for events, for advocacy days, for meeting with policymakers, as well as doing a lot of our engagement with regulatory agencies in the state of California throughout rulemaking processes, ranging on things from energy and emissions to water, land use, and packaging. We also have started operating or executing some grants in partnership with our State Department of Food and Agriculture, working on upscaling farm worker skills and advancing agriculture workforce development programs in the state in partnership with our extensive community college network. And that is taken up a lot of my day-to-day recently, but it's really exciting work, getting to build pathways for young leaders in California food systems. That's a quick little bit about me.
Great. Thank you, Jacob. I'll pass it to Mary. Do you need me to repeat the question, or do you have an understanding?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So I'm based in Colorado. I live in Boulder, and I grew up in Colorado Springs. I work for the Guggenheimer at Google Food Program, and so that's primarily the meals and snacks that are served on campus, and we also offer some hands-on programs. My overarching responsibility is marketing, communications, and engagement. So within that role, most of the projects that I do fall within 3 categories. The first is sustainability projects. So we have a lot of focus on reducing food waste, eliminating single-use plastics, increasing plant-forward food consumption, and also increasing agrobiodiversity in the ingredients that we're purchasing, and also awareness. Second category, I do a lot of celebrating culture with food. And so we collaborate with employee resource groups on campus to do inclusive celebrations in our cafes. An example is last week, we partnered with our Indigenous employee resource group to do a special dish in honor of the powwow that just happened in Colorado. So we were able to use a recipe from Chef Sean Sherman, who's the sous chef. He has a really great cookbook if you're ever interested. And we're able to procure some locally grown heirloom corn for that. So we get to do really fun activations like that I get to help with. And then another part of my role is supporting building partnerships and collaborations with internal groups, like those internal employee resource groups I just mentioned, but also some external partners. So one example of that is I partnered with our county farmers market to build a farmers market share program so that we receive weekly deliveries of seasonal produce, so that employees can have them delivered right to the office and support. There's like 30 plus different farmers represented through that program. And so that's just a really great way that I've gotten to help build relationships with outside partners to bring some exciting food systems work into our office. So yeah, that's kind of a general overview.
Great, thank you so much. I'll pass it off to Kasey.
Alrighty. Hi, everyone. My name is Kasey England. I am currently serving as the City of Phoenix Zero Waste Specialist for our Public Works Department. I'm originally from Northern California, like Jacob, just outside of Sacramento, in a city called Davis. It's a very agriculturally dominant city that is on the front end of sustainability efforts. In my current role, a lot of it is focused in education and outreach within the community. We do a lot of tours and presentations of our recycling sorting facility, of our compost facility, pretty much just trying to increase our overall waste diversion from the landfill and capture to utilize these resources as much as possible. I specifically have led a lot of projects with school food waste collection program that we were able to then collect food waste from the schools and take it over to our compost facility instead of it going to landfill. I also work with our Green Business Leader program. It's a set of over 100 different green businesses that focus on incorporating sustainability into daily practices. So I work with them, help build the connections and provide resources to them. And then we also do a whole bunch of different, oops, looks like my light went out. We do a lot of work with a lot of major events that happen in the city of Phoenix, such as the Super Bowl, such as Final Four coming up next week. We make sure that they are zero waste efforts. For example, the Super Bowl, we were able to exceed 92.6 waste diversion from the landfill. And for Final Four, we're expecting over 90% waste diversion as well. So really just trying to be on the front line, you know, in the community, trying to increase our overall waste diversion.
Great, thank you so much. Well, thank you all for coming and for those awesome introductions. My next question is back to Kiesha. Could you walk us through your journey from college to your current position, highlighting pivotal experiences or moments that fueled your interest in food systems? So generally, what motivated you to pursue a career in food and agriculture?
Okay, sure. So I'm from a very small town in southeastern Virginia. It's called Ivor, one traffic light. And I've always been in and around rural America, so it was not that big of a jump for me. But I did not grow up necessarily on a farm. By the time my parents, we still lived on our family farm location, but by the time I came along, my sister and my mother decided they knew farming was not for them. So we grew up around it because the farm was being farmed by our cousins, but we didn't really grow up, but exposed to it at an early age and what the world of rural life was about. So, but the biggest thing that kind of made the decision was that at the time, I was looking for how I was going to pay for college, and that's just what the focus was. I knew I wanted to go to college. I had great grades. I had done all the things that you're supposed to do in high school, but I needed to find a career that one was going to help me pay for school. And then I was super, super, super sensitive to the kind of the stories of I went to college but I'm not doing anything in what I studied. So I was just overly, probably more attentive to that as a 16 and 17-year-old than I probably needed to be. But that was a concern for mine. So I was just a research person. So I looked into all these stuff. I thought I wanted to be an accountant. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer. I went to all these. I did the whole gamut. I was the one that in the library researching, taking the little tests and all those things that tell you what you were naturally good at doing. I was a nerd like that. So um, I took a class when I was in high school. It was actually offered as a curriculum offered through the FFA, Future Farmers of America. And it was on leadership development. And it was actually my FFA advisor that said, you know, you really should look into agriculture. It's not what you think it is. And so I did my research on it. And I started out, I did get a full scholarship, got several of them actually. And went to Virginia State University, which is the 1890 land grant, historically Black college for the state of Virginia, and loved it. Started out as agribusiness and economics. Pivotal milestone, pivotal moment. I did an internship. I can't stress the importance of making the best use of those summers. I cannot stress. Did I say this? I can't stress. I cannot stress the importance of making wise use of those summers. So I did an internship with the USDA Forest Service. And I said, oh, I kind of like being outside. Didn't know I liked being outside. I didn't realize all those years in the garden. You know, when you're a kid, you just don't realize it. And probably as a kid, I thought it was work, but did not realize that it was developing this love for touching the earth, being in the earth, connecting with. You don't realize it when you're 12 or 14, but it comes back, like riding a bike. And I did an internship with the Forest Service and just said I fell in love with the natural resources of things and changed my major to plant and soil science, which is what I do have my degree in. So I'm technically an agronomist, and just fell in love with that. USDA offered but the first year I got all this money, but all that first year money was gone by the second year. So the second year I said to figure out how I was going to pay for school. So USDA offered a scholarship and I applied for it and I got it. And with the scholarship came an intern. It was an intern scholarship program. And I participated in that and was converted to full-time employment with USDA Natural Resources Conservation Service. I didn't go back to Forest Service because I didn't really want to do forestry. That was almost too much outdoor work. It was like you got to find your balance, right? You got to kind of find your balance. And been working for NRCS the whole time since I was 19. And so took every summer then with NRCS, converted to full-time employment after I graduated, and have been with the agency since then, working in about 8 states. I've moved around 6 or 7, 12. I moved 12 times, but I think I worked in now like 6 or 8 states. So I've gotten to see the whole country, and I can't, it's more than just what I do. Is these other experiences that USDA has afforded me, because I've lived in all these places and met all these people and had all these different positions, just from, applying for this little scholarship thing that happened, however many years ago it was. I won't tell you, but, I'll let you guess. And so, yeah, that kind of fueled my, it was just that one little pivotal moment with, yeah, outdoors is not that bad. And I like this. And that the connection back to what I did not realize was my connection to our planet at a young age, that my parent, my mother and my aunt had kind of instilled in me, because we always grew our own food. We just always grew our own food. And now looking back at it, shucking corn would seem like a chore then, but now I realize the connection that it made for me. So.
Great, thank you. I'm gonna ask Jacob the same question. So can you walk us through your journey from college to your current position, highlighting pivotal experiences or moments that fueled your interest in food systems, and what motivated you to pursue this career?
Yeah, so actually, like Similar to Keisha's story, I did not come from an agricultural background beyond living on about an acre and gardening for our own food until I got involved in Future Farmers of America in high school and realized that I had or was really interested in how food is produced and how it's moved and how consumers interact with all these different touch points with our food system. So I studied crops and horticulture and land resource management at California State University, Chico. Did agronomy work, was a lot of outdoor work, but I'm very interested in science, in science-based learning, and work. And after some work for some different farms in Northern California, I volunteered for a local city council campaign. Realized that politics was not for me, but had an advisor to that campaign kind of in talking to me and mentoring me, expressed to me that they felt like I was good at understanding the nexus of science and policy and people. So I spent a couple years exploring that and found through trial and error of many different programs, whether they were little permit programs or certificate programs, realizing I had an interest in food systems. So when I found the Sustainable Food Systems program at the Swette Center, and got really interested in food systems as a whole, big picture food systems, and how influential policy can be in food systems. Like I said in my answer to the previous question, I grew up in Sacramento, it's the capital of California, so just very steeped in policy, family friends. Many of our family friends worked in government and worked for various industries, so I had experience with what a job adjacent to or near policy would be like. And as I've gone through this food systems program, just really grown in my passion and respect for agriculture and food systems, from the people who grow our food to the people who do all the value added steps in between and then market it. And I mean, I can't stress enough the 2 or 3 years between my undergrad and my graduate program that I spent doing different internships, working different jobs, sometimes multiple jobs at one time, just trying to feel out and understand what filled my cup and what made me feel good, and finding an industry or a topic that I could work on and make a career that made me feel fulfilled and made me feel like I was using my skills and my knowledge to make an impact. In the world, even if it's just my community or in my state. And feels like a long time, but only 6 years, and now I'm at the end of my program, and I couldn't have asked for better opportunities along the way.
Great. Thank you, Jacob. I'll pass it to Mary.
Thank you. This is lovely to just get to hear everybody's stories too. I'm enjoying this. So I didn't know that I wanted to work in food and ag when I was in college. I grew up in a family that really encouraged me to try to do good in the world. And so that was kind of what I was interested in, is finding some way to make a positive impact in the world. And I had always been a strong writer. So I got really interested in journalism and studied journalism and thought that was going to be my career path. But along the way, did an internship. So that's a good theme, is I did an internship to help pay my rent, and it was at a PR agency. And all my journalist friends said, "Oh, you're going to the dark side, going to work in PR." And I was like, well, I have bills to pay. But it ended up being a really happy accident, because the PR agency I was at focused on the natural and organic food industry. So I got to work with a spectrum of companies. Some of them were like international corporations selling, they were like the largest distributor of organic produce. And some of them were tiny little startup food companies. And some of them were grocery stores. And it was just a really interesting mix of different types of food businesses, all kind of within the organic natural space. And at the same time as that internship, I also got to go to these events. The owner of the agency had a farm, and her husband was a farmer and a chef. And so I would go and help with these cooking classes they'd run out there. I helped run their CSA program. And so I really got this introduction to food in this really beautiful way that I had never experienced before. And it was really exciting to me of like, oh my God, I'd never have it beet before and it's delicious and I love it. And why didn't I grow up eating these types of foods, or, you know, growing my own food or cooking my own food? And it was really a big moment in my life where I changed how I see food. And I also started learning more about food systems. And so the internship turned into a job. I spent about 5 years at that marketing agency. I learned a lot. I was lucky to have a really great mentor in my boss. And after that time there, I started thinking and feeling that urge of like, oh, I really want to make a positive impact with my career. I'm not so excited about, you know, working for these big corporations. I'm going to go join Food Corps, which is this AmeriCorps program that connects kids to healthy food in schools. And so it was a really big pay cut. I like cut my salary by like 2/3. And that was really scary for me because I didn't have a big financial safety net. But ultimately, like, it worked out and I'm really glad I did it. I moved to Montana and I thought I would just do it for 1 year and then go back to my other job. But it was a really great place to be learning and doing hands-on programming with kids, working with school food directors to source more local ingredients and do more scratch cooking. I stayed in Montana for a while and then moved to Michigan in a different role with them, and then eventually moved back to Colorado to be closer to family. And I found a role that was very similar to what Food Corps did, doing farm to school programming within Colorado. And it was when I was at that school district in Colorado that I started the master's program in sustainable food systems. It was during the pandemic, so it was a really great time to be doing an online grad program. And we were working on a lot of food access and food security issues with the pandemic, working to make sure families could still get connected to meals even when schools weren't in session. So I got a little bit deeper into food security work in that role than I had before. And then I had a friend, just a person that I had met a couple times through work, recruited me for the role that I'm currently in. And honestly, I was really excited about it and excited about going back into the private sector a lot because of what I'd learned in my ASU classes about the private sector, the power of the private sector, and its role in sustainable food systems. So I was excited to take this new role. I've been here for about 1.5 years, and it's been a lot of fun so far. So I think that answers the question mostly.
Yes, thank you, Mary. I'll pass it to Kasey.
All right, thank you. Similar to everyone else, I was really motivated basically from my start with backyard gardening with my family at home. You know, there's something special about just growing your own food and you know, really gaining the appreciation of all of the resources that need to sustain it, even on a small scale. You know, when you grow a tomato in your yard, there's no way that you would want to waste that food item because you knew it took so much love, appreciation, dedication to, you know, and natural resources, water, soil, everything. There's no way that you're going to waste that material. And so I further gained that appreciation for minimizing food waste. When I was in college, ASU, I worked for University Sustainability Practices there. And that's really where I got the opportunity to introduce and lead the Borderlands Produce Rescue partnership between ASU and them. This organization diverts produce that would normally go to the landfill due to minor imperfections or surplus on the Arizona-Mexico border, and then diverts it out to the community. Back in 2016 to 2018, we had ASU West Campus as the first diversion site at ASU, where we were distributing monthly produce to members of the community. We'd often get around 500 plus people every time. And it was, you know, just perfectly good produce that was, you know, going to go to the landfill normally. So we really helped bridge the gap between food insecurity and food waste. And so I was really glad to be a part of that. And I further increased my knowledge in the food system in my undergrad when I added the food system sustainability certificate. And then, you know, continuing to go from there. That's when I added my master's in sustainable food systems program, and I've just loved learning more about the entire food system as a whole, compared to more of the back end and the waste. And so yeah, I've really prized all these opportunities that I got in college and beyond, and I will continue to do so.
Awesome. Thank you, Kasey. My next question, back to Kiesha. Can you describe a typical day in your role and shed some light on the workplace culture within your organization?
Sure. So my role is probably kind of boring now. I could tell you what I used to do. That was a fun part. Not that it's not fun, it's just very different. So, like I mentioned earlier, we work directly with farmers and ranchers. So a typical day. So let me just maybe talk about that major position. So we have specific positions. They're very specific. So we have soil conservationists. That's what my working title was when I first came to the agency. We have rangeland management specialists, which you mostly find in the western part of the United States, to address the issues specific to range. Of course, we hire engineers because a lot of our conservation practices are structural, and they require a PE license, like a professional engineer. And so we have an array, a bunch of engineers sprinkled around the state. We have soil scientists. We are the keepers for the United States of America of the soils map. So we have an array of soil scientists whose job is to actually map the soils of the United States. So we have GIS specialists. So just depending on what your role is in the agency, your technical role, and there's an array of, we have agronomists, some that are very specific in agronomy. We have biologists, wildlife biologists, that assist us with addressing wildlife habitat. And so it just depends on what your role is. I was a soil conservationist, so I worked directly, mostly with cropland, and addressing those resource issues as it relates to cropland. So helping those producers with their inefficient and effective crop rotation, nutrient management, pest management, those type of, making sure that the land, the ground is covered as much as possible. So what is their tillage system? And I started in the eastern United States, so tillage systems, and those kind of things, making sure we keep that soil in place and it's not running off, and settling in our water bodies. So that's the typical day of an entry-level field office employee. Very much about relationships, because the culture of agriculture or of farming, the most farmers, we're the government, we're the feds, so getting them to trust us. So there's a whole relationship building thing that happens. So one interesting, unique thing is you have to be technically efficient. Technically strong, but you also have to have really good communication skills with working with those producers and being able to make very difficult or complex technical issues, translate that into layperson language, and connect it back to the producer's bottom line. So you got to know a little bit about economics, because if it don't make pencil out for them, it's going to be very difficult to sell conservation to them. But in my role now, like I said, my role is operational and administrative. I'm in a state office where there are, I'm in cubicles. I never was in cubicles before. In field offices, it's a little bit more, it's less formal. But here, I'm dealing with more policy things, political things, working with other state agencies, other federal agencies. How do we coordinate things together? Larger scale issues for this state. And we do create or develop like a statewide strategic priority list. So what are the huge issues in Arizona, focused on like wildfire mitigation, right? So that's going to be one of our top issues. Water quantity is going to, as a state, what are those things? And so I kind of lead those coordinated efforts, and not just within our agency, but with multiple other partners that have statewide implications. And then we kind of develop those plans to kind of get then the local folks develop their own plan, and we try to tie those local issues up to the state issues. So typical day is right what I'm doing right now. I'm on Zoom a lot. A lot of meetings. That's why I say it's not as fun now. When you move up, it's not as fun as when I was out working with farm, actually out on the ground doing the work with a lot of our producers. That's what I think is really the impactful work that I do, even though it's impactful now, but a lot of meetings and a lot of emails. I'm sorry, that wasn't very probably sexy at all. So I'll sell you on the other stuff though. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiesha. I'll give it over to Jacob.
Yeah, so for me, I work in a bit of a catch-all job. Usually when you're in more like entry level or mid-career level jobs and policy, it's gonna be jobs like what I do, especially if there's coordinator in your title. So I spend a lot of time coordinating our members. So that's, communicating things to them that are happening in Sacramento and making sure that they understand how they will be impacted by some of the events or decisions being made by our legislature and our regulatory apparatus. I also spend a lot of time coordinating with my fellow stakeholders who might work at other nonprofit agencies, other lobbying firms, or other member-based organizations that might be for-profit. Coordinating with them to talk about some of the issues that we're engaged on, hear from them what their members are caring about or are tuned into, and seeing how we can sort of cobble together a coalition of agricultural representatives in Sacramento to not only just advocate for our members, but also advocate for our industry as well. I do a lot of working with our and interfacing with our regulatory agencies on rulemaking processes. So a lot of my time is spent writing or engaging in public comment periods. So it's writing letters or attending meetings and giving verbal comment, meeting with agency staff, emailing or Zooming with them just to have discussions and to talk about agriculture and agriculture issues. Mainly educating. A lot of policymakers can't be experts on every single topic area that they're working on. So working to help educate them and also build relationships and build trust with them. So when we come to them with an issue or when they come to us with an issue, there's a little bit of trust built so that we can reach an understanding. And just having trust and building relationships is really important in public policy. Day to day, it is pretty quick paced. I think working in public policy in general is a very quick paced environment. But when it comes to California or on the federal side, I think that's especially so. Things can change really quickly given the circumstances of an issue or the politics. California is a full-time legislature, so our legislators are in Sacramento for most of the year, every year. And they are passing record numbers or attempting to pass record numbers of bills. I think last year we saw 2,000, a little over 2,100 bills. All of those passed, and about a third of them were directly related to agriculture in some way, whether that's energy, emissions, water, the environment, land use, conservation. So it's a fast-paced environment. It's having to be a generalist in many different types of issues that may not seem related, but kind of using that generalist knowledge and using your skills as well as your network and your relationships to string together all of these different issues and communicate the relevancy of them to your industry, that's agriculture and food, as well as communicating that and its relevancy to our members who pay us to do this work. I think that answers the question.
Great, thank you, Jacob. On to Mary.
All right. I was thinking about these questions yesterday, and I thought I'd just share what yesterday looked like for me. So that seems like a good portrayal of a day, but similar to what Kiesha was saying, it's a lot. I'm in a lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of video calls all day long. So we're working with people across the country. So it was a meaningful day with a little bit of work in between. But some of the meetings that we had, I started the day with checking in with our general manager about upcoming cultural celebrations that we're doing in the cafes and signage and storytelling that we're going to do around that I'll create. And so today's International Transgender Visibility Day. So that's a great day. So we did some celebrations around that. And then we're making some plans for Passover, which is coming up in late April. Next, I had a different meeting with a team of chefs who are based around the country. We're planning this multi-day event, and we were reviewing the menu for it. And we were calling out different vendor partners that we're going to be purchasing from, ingredients from, that we want to highlight. So highlighting the stories of companies who are doing really interesting sustainability work, or if they're BIPOC or woman owned, we want to be helping to share those stories too. After that, I met with the team that's planning that event, and that's an internal conference that focuses on topics like sustainability, food access, and tech in the food industry. And so we met to talk about event planning details and make some progress on that event we're working toward. After that, I met with a different work team, and that team, we're doing a pilot project that focuses on reducing front of house food waste in our cafes. So we're using data collection and behavioral science driven interventions to try to figure out what works best so that we can take those best practices and apply them elsewhere. And again, my role is marketing and communication. So on that team, we were working on like improving our signage to clear up confusion and try to do it, try to make sure we didn't have contamination in our waste. And then my last meeting of the day was working with a colleague. We are creating a bunch of written content for a promotional campaign that focuses on helping people to connect over food. And so we are focusing on promoting our cooking classes that we offer, gardening programs, and other hands-on offerings. So it was a busy day. Sometimes it's hard when there's lots of meetings because you also have work to do. And so it's like, how are you supposed to work when you're in meetings all day? But it does ebb and flow, and there are slow seasons and busy seasons. And overall, it's totally manageable. But this week's a busy one for sure. But I do love jobs, and I love past jobs that I've had too. I feel like in food and ag, when you get to wear a lot of hats, kind of like Jacob was talking about. I personally really like roles where you get to do a lot of different types of things, and you have to be a little bit of an expert in a lot of different things. I think that keeps life interesting. So there's definitely a lot of that here.
Thank you, Mary. I'll pass to Kasey.
All right. So what I really like about my current role is that I'm out in the community. Every day can look different. Whether I am at the compost facility giving a tour to a business or to a nonprofit organization, or whether I'm giving a presentation. I like that flexibility and change of pace. I don't like being in the office all day, so I really like the opportunity to get out of the office, out in the community. I do want to further emphasize the importance of relationship building in any role. With my work, for example, with our schools in our school food waste collection program, it's that continuous communication with them to ensure that all stakeholders are well taken care of. They have that buy-in to whatever program that you're running. I can't stress that enough. In our office, we're very team-based. We collaborate a lot internally, as well as cross-departmentally. City of Phoenix is such a large local government entity that we do have the luxury of having so many different departments. We have our water services department, we have streets department, we have aviation, we have so many different departments. It wouldn't make sense not to collaborate with all the different departments to work towards shared goals. So that's been really important for us. It's not necessarily as cutthroat as I would say a, maybe a private business. So that part is also good. And, there's room for, just working together, for shared purposes. But yeah, it's a little bit how it's like at City of Phoenix.
Thanks, Kasey. Our fourth question is, what opportunities have emerged or do you anticipate emerging as a result of your current position? I'll go to Kiesha.
Okay, so some of the, well, I'll talk about our priority issues, which I kind of talked about: wildfire mitigation and water quantity, of course, the number one issues for Arizona right now. But there are a couple of things that are emerging in you. I don't know if I could still say they're emerging, but there are a couple of areas that are kind of new to our space. And a lot of people, we can be very traditional. As an agency, it's big. So it's big and it's bulky and it's the government. And so sometimes being able to lead and stay current with emergent issues can be hard or more challenging in a federal agency as big as, so USDA is huge, it's the biggest. And so sometimes we struggle in that space of, this is the current issue that kind of ebbs and flows, and moving the machine to address that issue, right? So a big part of my role in that is to be able to help us with our being a little bit more limber. One area in particular that we are in right now is the urban agriculture space. That is new for USDA and NRCS. To some degree, we've done a little bit of it over the years, but we've really, really, really made a concerted effort to focus ourselves so that because we are the government, we should be serving everyone. Period. There's a period at the end of that sentence. So always looking for ways that we can expand who we are, what we do, to service everyone and the needs, no matter what our program has traditionally done. And so the urban ag space is an area that we are definitely into. Phoenix was selected as one of 17 pilot states about 3 or 4 years ago to actually get a USDA service center, of which we hope to be cutting the ribbon for in about a month or so, where we've already hired the staff with both us and our sister agency, the Farm Service Agency, where we're going to directly put staff in Phoenix to service those urban producers in the area. It's already, getting the office, it's just a paperwork thing. The office, they're already functioning. And we're doing it in coordination with the University of Arizona Cooperative Extension. That's where we're going to be, in that space where they're on here in Phoenix, and being able to have a space just for those producers. We've completed the outdoor classroom where they can have classes and things where they can all come together. And that's a new way of doing things for us. So that's what I would probably say is our most emergent new kind of issue. I mean, we've been fighting wildfire and water quantity and the Colorado River Basin issue for many, many years. So that's not really a new thing for us, but this urban space is definitely new for us, and we're super excited about it. And what's gotten us even more excited is the response we've got. It's overwhelming. It's way more than we actually anticipated. The number of producers in the, in suburb, not just in Phoenix, but also the suburbs of Phoenix, that are very interested in growing their own food, even though they live in the city. So, yeah.
Great, thank you, Kiesha. I'll pass to Jacob.
One of the opportunities that's emerged for Agricultural Council of California is our partnership with the California Department of Food and Ag in executing a specialty crop block grant that is focused on agricultural workforce development. It's called the Agricultural Workforce Development Program. If anyone's interested, it's on the department's website. So we as a nonprofit, we've hired regional coordinators in 7 different regions in the state of California, focusing on 2 things. Upscaling skills of existing farm workers and farm labor to meet the needs of agricultural employers as the industry starts to change really, really quickly. The rate of change in agriculture as it relates to technology and practices is increasing. And the opportunities to what they call upskill, which is learn new skills or master existing ones, is just not there. There's also a gap between curriculum and programs, specifically in community colleges, and what the needs are of agricultural employers. So we're thinking outside of administrative opportunities or some of those traditional 4-year programs and looking at skills-based programs at community colleges and finding ways. Kind of the main goal of the program is to find ways to partner industry and community colleges to develop a number of internships throughout the state in various industries that are specifically related to specialty crops, so tree nuts and grapes and fruits and vegetables. That's really exciting because, I think as people who work on the agriculture side of food systems, recognize that there is a skill gap, recognize that as we feel the urgency to shift the industry into something that's a little bit more environmentally friendly, as we look for ways to lessen our impact on the climate and lessen our effect on increasing climate change, things are just changing really quick. Whereas you used to be able to get a really good job with a welder certificate, now you need advanced computer programming skills in order to provide maintenance for farmers on their farm equipment. So that is really exciting. I think that it's something that has emerged for us and is emerging. We're piloting the first year right now, and our goal is to create a program that is resilient and can exist beyond the timeline of the grant that we've agreed to execute with the department, both USDA and the California Department of Food and Agriculture. And so I'm sure that things will change and emerge in new forms.
Thanks, Jacob. That's a minute.
Hey, so I think I spent a lot of my 20s thinking about what type of organization I should work for. Again, like raised in family, it's all about like creating positive change in the world. So that's one of my big drivers. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try, first it was just about getting a job out of college and making money. And I got introduced to food, but then I went into the nonprofit world and I was like, this is where it is. This is where we're going to do it. And a lot of great work happened there. And then I went and worked a little bit with government. I was like, maybe this is where it happens. Maybe this is where we need to be doing the work. And that was okay. And now I'm back in the private sector. And I think I definitely did a lot of exploration and trying to learn, where is the right place for me with my skill set where I can make a difference. And I think what I'm realizing now that I'm getting older is like, you can do a lot of good in a lot of those types of places. It doesn't have to be nonprofits. It doesn't have to be the private sector. There's work to be done everywhere. And a lot of good people are needed in all of those types of industries. And so I am back in the private industry. And let's see, the question is, what opportunities have emerged? Do you anticipate emerging? So yeah, I think I'm just really excited in my current role to learn more about the power of the private sector for affecting change. The company I work for, Guggenheimer, signed on to this campaign called Beans is How. It's kind of a silly name, but the idea is really cool. It's this coalition of, corporate dining, food service vendors, of, school districts, it's fancy fine dining restaurants, it's all types of food service programs who are all signed on to try to double the consumption of beans by 2028. And so this came out of the 2021 United Nations Food System Summit, because they recognized, okay, beans, that they're great. I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir here, but they're affordable, they're sustainable, they're nutritious, they're this incredible ingredient that if we can increase the consumption, a lot of good things are going to happen in the world. And so, the company I work for signed on to this coalition. And so part of our work across all of the clients that we serve now is how do we increase bean consumption, and how do we tell the story of why beans are so great, and how do we try to change people's minds about, like, should they not just be a side dish, maybe they can be part of an entree and be something that's really delicious. So I think it's really exciting to be in a role thinking about how do we shift the types of ingredients that are sourced for the hundreds of thousands of meals that are served in restaurants, in cafeterias, in corporate dining situations. So yeah, it's, for me, I'm always curious and I'm always looking to learn. And I just think it's great to, in my career, to have gotten to sort of sample and try out the nonprofit world, the school world, now back in the corporate world. But I think there is a lot of opportunity to learn in all of those places. So yeah, I'm excited about what I'm going to continue to learn in this role going forward. I think that's it. I guess the last thing I'd say too is, like, it's interesting too when you move between different types of industries like that to think about how do you carry the values that you have and the relationships that you have. So I was really involved in food security work in my last role with the school district. I was part of this network of food access groups. So it's all the food banks in the area, different food security nonprofits and advocacy groups. And it's been really exciting for me to figure out how do I translate that relationship that I want to maintain into a new role like this. And so there have been some exciting and cool things that we've been able to do, but the relationships change. But I don't think you have to change your values or change the type of impact that you want to make in the world. I think you just have to figure out, the new setting you're in and what the levers are that you can pull for doing the types of work you want to do. That's it.
Thank you, Mary. I'll pass to Kasey.
Alrighty. So some of you might have seen the movie Yes Man before. Well, I kind of used that same philosophy when I first started my role with the city of Phoenix. I was like, I'm going to say yes to everything. And that mentality actually has worked a lot for me. I really have, said yes to as many opportunities that came my way with my current role. And I've developed a lot of meaningful connections and led a lot of different projects that I'm really proud of. And so, this is all within reason. I won't do a lot of the stuff that was in the movie kind of thing, but, I really wanted to really take advantage of any opportunity that came my way. And so, through building those connections, leading those projects, it has resulted in me then accepting a new position in the aviation department at the city of Phoenix. And so I'll be the sustainability program manager next month for aviation, and I'm really excited for that opportunity. But I think it wouldn't have been possible if I just stayed in my lane and only did exactly what the job description said I could do. In the past, my role, there was nothing to do with food waste in general, and so I made it happen. I wanted to lead this effort and help the city of Phoenix with its diversion efforts, and I thought a lot of it had been neglected was in food waste. And so I really incorporated that into my role, even though it was assigned duty. And I'm thankful for that. And then one other thing too is city of Phoenix has given me the opportunity to have the tuition reimbursement. So I've been able to have my master's program, paid for 95% pretty much. And back when I was in my undergrad, I was like, there's no way I'm doing my master's. There's no way I'm going to spend any more, money on school. And so this was really an opportunity. I love learning, but I didn't necessarily want to have to pay thousands of dollars for the program. And so if you can find a job that has tuition reimbursement, it's a really, good amenity that you can have. So I highly advise that you look for a job that has this opportunity.
Thank you, Kasey, and congratulations on your new position. Our final question is, for students aspiring to follow a similar career path, what guidance would you offer to help them kickstart their journey? What specific skills and experiences do you consider to be the most beneficial for them to acquire?
Okay, so I think I already answered this one, but I'll take a deeper dive here. I think I've covered it a little bit. It's very important to know your craft, right? In my space, we can be highly technical, and that is very important to know your craft. So you have to know what you're talking about. But a big part of the job, I can't say enough about your communication skills, oral communication skills, written communication skills, because a big part of my job is, and all of everyone on my team is taking that highly technical information and relaying it to the layperson, to communities, to farmers and ranchers. And I used to say that may not always have education, but a lot of farmers and ranchers have degrees now. It's just the nature of the work. But we're also sometimes communicating in communities where, everyone doesn't even have a high school a diploma, and you got to be able uh, to translate and explain some things that, complex engineering designs in such a way that everyone understands what you're talking about, so that we don't have some catastrophic issue with that structure. So the communication is going to be very, very important in developing your communication skills early on, and the sooner you can, the better. I think I've already said the thing. I can't speak enough about what to do, making wise use of your summertime, um, and taking those summers to really, that's where you get your practice for all of these things. In the summer, when you're looking to just try out what you want to do, and trying to get some kind of a summer employment related to what it is you're interested in. Those both the development of what you get during those summers, but also the network that you build, even if you don't end up working for the particular place that you're spending that summer at. You have developed a network, because one thing about the ag, natural resources, food space is that we are in and out of these places all the time. And for the federal government, I mean, like, I was with the Forest Service. I have employees they work for the Forest Service, then they come work for us, then they go to work for Bureau of Reclamation, then they go work for BIA, then they come back to us, then they're, like, so these networks, then they say, oh, I want to go work for the city. It happens. And so those networks are invaluable to you, that you can develop early on, because you never know where you're going to end up being. You never know who's going to be your boss. I can't say that enough. So relationships, not just with customers you may be serving, but relationships with your peers, and those of you that are in college and I'm telling you, you may be the one that you may not think is the person that's going to be your supervisor one day. So developing and maintaining good relationships, not burning any bridges, is just a key piece to it. So I can't say enough about the importance of communication and building relationships, or having the skill to build and maintain relationships.
I'll pass to Jacob.
Yeah, I think kind of echoing what Kiesha had said, is just take as many different opportunities as you can to further your education and your experience. That could be summer internships, that could be, you know, conferences or summits in a particular area you're interested in. It could be a permaculture class hosted by, a local farm. Anything to kind of explore your interests, meet people who work in those spaces, ask them questions, network with them and ask them questions, and ask them about the work they do, so that you can not only just build your experience, but also learn learn what it is you like to do and what you think you could make a career out of. And with that, I think, it's also important to, sometimes we get so caught up in the wheel of the day-to-day life, that we can get a little, kind of stuck into one course. And I think it's really important to remember and remind ourselves that we're not confined to one path or one job, and kind of reminding all you on this call that it's worth taking the risk, to maybe change your job or shift your career trajectory, to gain as much diverse knowledge and a diverse set of skills, so that you can be successful in any career you land in, and while also experiencing many different career paths that you may be able to follow, that you're passionate about. And I think also, using that as an opportunity to find what you're passionate about. For me, I've grown to be passionate about food systems as a whole, but for me, it's really agriculture. I know and I care about agriculture and farmers, and how our food is produced. And recognizing that if you're going to explore a role in policy like me, and you're passionate about agriculture and you're passionate about food systems, um, when it comes to policy, you may not have to work at a specific, like, dedicated agriculture or food systems organization, whether that's a state agency, a nonprofit, or a for-profit private sector, um, organization. So long as you know what you're passionate about, there's ways to make your work fulfill that passion and connect your work to that passion and that drive of interest. And I also would say, don't be afraid to keep learning and educating yourself. I am one person, I firmly believe, you're never done learning and you're never done educating yourself, and you should take as many opportunities as you can to grow, and learn something new. And I think I took a big risk with that, moving out of what would have been a really good career in production agriculture and agronomy and research, taking a risk to go get, a graduate degree that was a little bit different than what I was doing, that ended up connecting really well with two things that I'm passionate about, which is agriculture and public policy. Because life's all about learning and, um, taking opportunities to do that.
Thanks, Jacob.
Okay, I can find the mute button. So, okay, 3 points. A lot of them are echoing what Kiesha and Jacob shared, but start somewhere. My first job out of college was not my dream job. It was my backup plan, but it ended up being a great place for me to get introduced to food work and to build communications and marketing skills, which are really applicable everywhere you work. So I haven't always worked in communications. I've done programs and operations, but my marketing communication skills were always super useful. So yes to what Kiesha said. As much as you're able to pick up those skills, get those experiences in communications that will serve you well. And you've got time. I think that's the other thing is I felt a lot of pressure around college of like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be done with college and I have to figure out what I'm doing and I want the dream job. And the truth is, like, there's going to be a lot of jobs in your future. You don't have to have the perfect job lined up right when you're done. You can just start somewhere, learn from that, and that will inform where you go next. It's okay to not know exactly what you want to do. Just start somewhere, build your skills, and then follow your curiosity and joy. So, in addition to like my full-time jobs, I would take like part-time jobs working on a farm or running a double your SNAP bucks at the farmer's market, or, all of these different pieces of food systems work that I was interested in, I was able to dive into through volunteer work or through part-time jobs or short-term jobs. So I think try to find those opportunities to get a diversity of experiences, because even if you think, I'm going in this direction and I need to stay focused on that, there could be something else really beautiful that you're missing if you focus too much on what you think is right for you. So yeah, don't be afraid to try new things. Try to utilize your time while you're in college by doing part-time jobs, summer jobs, internships that are interesting to you and that bring you joy, because I think that's really telling of what you want to explore later in your career as well. The last thing I'll mention too is look for good bosses and mentors. And I know sometimes this is hard because you don't always get to pick your boss, but for me, looking back, I've been really fortunate to have some really wonderful bosses who supported me. But even when I didn't have great bosses, there were different people in communities that mentored me and supported me and encouraged me to grow. So I think having those people in your life is really important. Having sounding boards that you can talk to and ask for feedback about how you're doing, I think is really valuable. And also like not being afraid to ask for feedback. I think definitely early in my career, it was a very scary thing going into annual reviews, and I was fully expecting to get fired every time. And I usually got promoted and a raise instead. So I think the lesson I wish I could tell my younger self is like, don't wait until the annual review. Check in once a month and say, hey, how am I doing? What could I be doing better? Do you have any feedback for me? Instead of just, assuming the worst or assuming that you're doing terrible. I think get that feedback. It might be negative. It might be helpful for you to hear that feedback. But yeah, just try to start a practice of asking for feedback, finding people that you can have conversations with, and as much as possible, like choose jobs with good bosses, because that'll make all the difference. And also, Kiesha, yes, I was nodding when you said like you never know who's going to be your boss. Yeah, people turn up in weird ways in your career, so try not to burn bridges. The person who recruited me for my current job, I had only met her like in passing like 3 times, and so I'm glad I didn't make a bad impression. So you never know who's going to turn up.
Thank you, Mary. I'll pass it to Kasey.
Alrighty. So all of us being in the sustainability field, I think we can all agree that, we're choosing this path for a purpose, not for the money. But, it's really, just about making a difference in the community, at least I feel, and I'm happy with myself when I know that I can make a difference in at least one person's life, whether, making them smile or, helping them introduce new sustainability practices into their daily life. Find your specific purpose, and, just like everybody always says, you'll never work a day in your life. So, really follow your passion, explore different opportunities so you can find that specific purpose, and just get out there. After my undergrad, I personally was feeling really burnt out and overwhelmed, and that's where I actually took some time off. I didn't go straight into the workforce right out of college. And, I think it's okay to take some time off. But at the same time that you probably have to understand that if you wait too long, it can be a more difficult path to get to where you want to be. So just don't wait too long into that aspect. And then some beneficial skills to acquire, I would definitely say time management. Time management is useful in no matter what role you're going to go into. And then getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, step outside your comfort zone. That's the only way you can really learn is, really putting yourself out there. And then network as much as possible. As everybody said, hold your connections tightly, don't burn any bridges, and just, be a good person. And I think that if you show respect in your daily life, whether it's at work or, at home, only good things are to come.
Great. Well, thank you, Kasey and Mary and Jacob and Kiesha for this excellent advice and for sharing your career experience with us. We're going to move on to the Q&A section. So we have about 15 minutes left to ask some questions. So if anybody has a question, just go ahead and raise your hand with like the Zoom reactions, and I can just call on you and you can unmute yourself and ask your question. And if you're uncomfortable like speaking aloud, you can also put it in the chat. Daniel, you have your hand raised.
Okay, so this is probably for Mary. But you had mentioned the difference between the private sector and then like nonprofit, and how it caught my ear that you said it was a little more cutthroat. And I guess I sort of like I'm finding, because I graduated in December with a degree in sustainability and urban planning, and so I'm still looking for work. I guess I'm a little bit curious. Um, like I keep sort of swaying towards a nonprofit because I like Kasey said, I'm in this to do the most good. I have a little bit of concerns about the corporate model and the private sector being kind of profit driven. And so I guess I was a little curious about sort of elaborating on that and maybe a little bit more of how you came to terms with being in that in a role compared to and how maybe that is actually a bigger difference than perhaps maybe a small community nonprofit can do, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. I think that's a question I've thought about a lot in my career. So it's a good one. The answer I have is, well, I'll start actually. I think it was helpful for me the first 5 years of my career. I worked at an agency, so I got to work with a lot of different types of businesses. So I worked with like a couple of really big corporations and then some really small startup companies, but mostly businesses. And so I got to see it varies so widely, like within the private sector. Like there are some businesses who are genuinely really passionate about doing good work with sustainability, with like human rights issues, with like, there can be really great businesses that are for profit that are doing great. And the other end of the spectrum is there can be some really terrible companies who are, maybe sell an organic product, but that doesn't mean anything about how much they care about the environment or how much they care about, paying their workers a living wage. So I think it's really genuinely a spectrum. And I think it's, for me, been about like finding the right place where you feel like they have values that live beyond their employee guidebook. And so for me, that's been really great to have found a place where I feel like they're genuinely invested in sustainability work and genuinely invested in a lot of other values that I care about. But I definitely, from my first job, know for a fact that there's a lot of companies out there that don't do that. My experience in the nonprofit world has also taught me that not all nonprofits are created equal also. They're kind of a spectrum as well. And I think I got frustrated sometimes with how dependent nonprofits can be on funders and what funders' priorities are. Funders' priorities can drive what the programs are, which can be really frustrating when, you as an individual have an opinion about what actually the work should be about or what it should look like. So I think money runs everything in our society, fortunately or unfortunately. And so I think, again, like you can work in either a nonprofit or a business and work toward good. And a lot of it has to do with how values are embedded in the organization, which like in the job searching process, that can be really hard to suss out. Like I know when I was interviewing for this job, they were like, oh yeah, we do a lot with sustainability. And I'm like, okay, but how real is it actually, or what does it actually look like? So just trying to do as much digging as you can about companies. I'd also recommend looking at like social enterprises. So like, have you heard of B Lab or B Corporation? Like the letter B. So they're companies who go through this rigorous auditing process to show that they, pay their workers a living wage. They're sustainably oriented. All of these other things, they have to go through this pretty rigorous audit to verify that they are a private sector business for good. And I think that's a pretty amazing certification system to also help find companies that like you might like to work for. And they have a job board. But that's kind of, for me, they're kind of like a gold standard for being like a checkbox of like, okay, this is a private business, but it's also not terrible and doing good in the world. So I would encourage you to look in the private sector. I think that a lot of good can be done there. And also, I'm excited about harnessing the amount of money that is spent in the private sector to try to channel it toward good.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Thank you.
Sure. It's a good question, though. It's still something I'm figuring out.
Alec, would you like to ask your question?
Hi, yeah. Hi. First of all, amazing speakers. Thank you for coming to speaking to us on Friday. Yeah, my question is, I graduated recently too, and just my experience, I feel like the sustainability job market is like every job market right now. It's awful. It's hard to find a job, and it's so cutthroat. And I'm just trying to find entry level in Arizona, and that is, you have 100 people applying for the same entry-level position. And I guess my question is twofold, actually. How do you keep from getting discouraged? Like, I want to give up, but my body won't let me do anything else but sustainability. And also, if you know of any reasons to have hope, any upcoming hope for sustainability in Arizona for work.
I can help answer that one. So like I said, I didn't get a job right after college. And I was feeling very discouraged because I didn't see anything at the time when I was applying either. It wasn't even that like I was getting rejected from jobs. I wasn't seeing any jobs to apply for. And my best advice is really just to be patient. The right job is, gonna be out there. I understand that there's a lot of financial, risk involved, and not being able to work, you're not able to provide for yourself or your family. So the best thing is, really just to follow a lot of different job boards of either different organizations, nonprofits, whatever you can. Subscribe to as many different things, continuously monitor LinkedIn, and then continue to build those connections, because a lot of times it's like everybody says, it's who you know. And so I think just being patient and then utilizing as many resources as possible. For example, City of Phoenix, so we have our job board available. We give weekly updates for any new job opportunities. You can sign up on, City of Phoenix's website, but you can do the same with a lot of different nonprofits and businesses in the area. And just a personal reflection of what I've seen is that the sustainability community is really growing in Arizona, at least from what I've seen. So I think there's going to be a lot more jobs coming out, in the near future.
I would
So
like. Sorry, go ahead. I was just gonna put the floor to you because I know NRCS has some opportunities.
we are, but so I did put a link to this is all the jobs in the whole country that NRCS is currently advertising. But so let me just kind of give you what's kind of happening from my perspective, from in the role as a person who hires. So there is a disconnect to me. I know I'm being recorded, so I'm gonna be careful. Between academia and the job market people, right? So when you say you have a degree in sustainability, I don't know what that means, right? So there's some reconnectivity that needs to happen between the working market and the academic market. And for us, I'm speaking specifically to Natural Resources Conservation Service, and it could be just the federal government. The federal government is very antiquated. It's very hard to move the gigantic ship, right? So we still hire agronomists. We can't find them. We don't know where they are. The schools aren't graduating them. Most of the schools have even gotten rid of the degree program, right? Because there's a shift in how people want to agronomy is not sexy. I'm just going to be honest. So no one's getting a degree in it, right? But I need agronomists. I need rangeland management specialists, and we need soil scientists. We can't find them. I just advertised a job for a soil scientist, and my director for ecological science just said, we got to re-advertise the job. We got 0 applicants. 0. Like a goose egg. But the degree is very specific. You have to have so many hours in soil, so many hours, and it's a lot of them. And so I think there is this chasm between academia and maybe what some of the employers are looking for. And I think academia has moved to these broader degrees, right? More general. And there may be a greater need for us. We want something very specific. So I need rangeland management specialists. You have to have so many hours of like rangeland plant ID and those kind of things. So, and it doesn't mean you got to change your major, right? What it means is we should, and one of the reasons I'm here is we're trying to develop a better relationship with ASU. So that's what we are working on. So I'm not saying that we're not doing it. We're actually actively engaged in how we do a better job of connecting with each other and maybe catching folks to say, hey, you need to take an extra source class and you'll qualify, right? And that may be all that it takes. It's a source course, right? You don't have to change anything else about your curriculum, but I think we have to do a better job of communicating us with academia so that academia is communicating that to the students. So one of the things that we did as a result of this number, because we have the data from the U.S. Department of Education, the degrees we're looking, all across the country. I think it was in the year 2020, only 120 people in the United States of America got a range science degree in the whole United States of America. And NRCS put out a call out. We needed 75 of them, of the 120 that we got to go find where they are. So, and that's just NRCS. And the federal government, BLM, Forest Service, all of them hire them too. We haven't got to the private sector. So in our mind, there's a shortage of people. And for us, there's a shortage. And what I just heard from you, there's a shortage of jobs. So we definitely have a disconnect, right? You can see that, right? So what we have done is we have made an adjustment in how we hire to try to pick up some of the broader degrees and change our job series to pick up some of those broader degrees. So now that they can qualify for some of our jobs. So on that link that I sent, I posted somewhere in there, you may see a position called Natural Resource Specialist. That is the broader degree, the position that requires a broader degree that you probably that maybe a degree in sustainability will qualify for. But because I don't know what that means, a degree in sustainability, I really don't know what that means. So because I don't know what that means, I don't even know to go and get those kind of people. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? But look at that link that I put in there. And I think you can even maybe type in Arizona or California where in the little location. You can filter it even more than what I have. I just filtered it for the agency for you. And look and see what's currently available. And we are also going to be doing direct hiring events. So I'll follow back up with the folks at the Swette Center. Maybe we can do another one of these when we're going to have our direct hire authority, where we'll be able to do some even maybe speed dating or whatever they call it these days. We'll be doing a lot of hiring. So more to come on that, but look at that link that I sent and see if there's something there for you that you may be interested in.
Great, thank you, Kiesha. I think that would be a great idea to do a little speed dating, see if people want to work for the NRCS. I think most of the questions in the chat have been answered by our panelists. Oh, Rachel has a question.
Hi, thank you all so much. That was super informative. I have a question for Jacob. I was just curious if there are any specific efforts or, policy efforts or work you've done directly with farmers and ranchers that you'd like to highlight around resiliency work. Obviously, you talked about the work with the specialty block grant program. I feel like that's kind of aligned with resilience work. But is there anything else that you have worked on that you feel kind of fits the definition of creating more resilient food systems to climate, to, situations like COVID-19 pandemic, etc.?
Yeah, and actually, Kiesha might have something to add on this too, but we do a lot of advocacy work on behalf of our State Department of Food and Agriculture for the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program. And so that's just creating more regional scale food systems infrastructure that doesn't rely on global supply chains in the case of a disruption like that. That's a specific example, but I think more generally, the way I've seen policy moving on the state and California level, but across the country and on the federal level, is a movement towards recognizing the importance of more decentralized food systems. especially because of the pandemic. I think the empty shelves thing was something that was really scary to consumers and policymakers from, just a consumer standpoint, but also from a national security standpoint as well. And so generally, I think there's a lot of focus going towards that. My final capstone project at the Swette Center is on regional food systems and food hubs. So I think if you're interested in that, there's ways to find the Resilient Food Systems Infrastructure Program and grants through the USDA in every state, I believe. Um, so you can certainly look into that if you're interested, and then just start tuning into policy conversations about agriculture and food systems because that's generally where things are probably going in the next 10 years.